If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, here to make sense out of the senseless right here on shrmedia.com. Conservative media done right. As I have everything falling apart on me, we got a great show lined up tonight. We have two very special guests, one a co-host, one a guest. And first, I'm going to bring in the great BZ. He's going to help me tonight. BZ.
I'm only great in terms of girth. Other than that, NSW or NSM, not so much. But thanks for saying so.
No problem. It's an honor. It's always an honor to have you here. And we're going to have a great show, or at least I hope to. We have a very special guest, vet and author, Joe Soul. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Let's bring him on in. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, everybody.
How bad did I mess up the last name?
ABC.
How do you do, sir?
Major Joe.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, sir? Uh-oh. You there, Joe?
He may have frozen.
Yeah. We'll give him a minute.
Let me
refresh
and see if it's us.
I don't know. I got the feed up live right now, too, and I can see us. Joe, if you're there, if you want close out, come back in, and we'll get you back into the show. Could have been a little oopsie. The software can be glitchy sometimes.
In the meantime, I love interviewing authors, but generally, I won't just select an individual author to interview on my show. I like to interview people that I've read and or met. My last interview of an author was an individual that I met at a book signing at a bookstore, a large chain that was actually in Washington, not North Idaho where I am. And I just want to let everybody know that when I say that I like to interview people that I read, this is a copy of Joseph's book. And we're going to be speaking tonight to Joe Sowell. He's the author of The Broken Mirror of Memory, Iraq and Other Tales. And as I explained earlier, I enjoy physical books. I am of a sufficient age that I don't read from digital stuff really very well at all. And after reading this book, I would also say that I would highly recommend the book as well. If you look at it, you can see it's not all that terribly thick. And so some of you may think, well, I'll get through this thing overnight. And you very well may. This is 184 pages. So comparatively speaking, it's not all that terribly long. But as I told Joe when he comes back, he has somehow managed to pack more concepts and thoughts into this book than many other books that I've read in the past year. And to me, this was a little bit of a thought experiment, which is another reason that I enjoyed the book. So I consider it that we have a very unique opportunity to speak to author and U.S. Army Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran Joe Sowell. And as I indicated, this is his book. I've learned over the years when I first started interviewing and speaking to authors, very important, do not Bigfoot the author. And what I mean by that is don't just blah the plot out and reveal things that should customarily be revealed by the authors themselves. So, Joe Sowell, you served in the U.S. Army in Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2008 to 2009. Can you tell us generally what Operation Iraqi Freedom was and what you were doing during that time in 2008 and 2009?
Well, I served there in southern Iraq as an ammunition specialist. Our job was to put out all the bombs and bullets for the operational units to go out and, take out the bad guys, so to speak. And boy, how can I describe it? It was an interesting experience, to say the least. Very complicated. It's not easy to define, I guess. Let's put it that way.
So, what kind of combat or interactions with the Iraqi combatants or other nationals or events did you see? Because if I'm not mistaken, you delineate 3 very specific events in the book.
I do, yeah. The biggest event was May 17, 2008. We got hit by 5 rockets, one within 198 meters. It blew a bunch of people over. But then we had 3 soldiers missing, and during the attack, me and a couple other soldiers were told to run out there and go find those guys, and that's what we did. And it was pretty chaotic. Frankly, I don't remember a lot about it. Most of the info in the book is from other people. It's from their state about it.
Okay. As I indicated, Joe Sowell, the book is relatively short, but it contains a lot of food for thought and a lot of stuff to talk about. So, okay, Joe's going to come back here in just a moment. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Returned. So I have to ask this. I think I know the answers, but we'll get into them a little bit later on in more detail. What compelled you to write this book, Joe Sowell?
I had to get everything out of me. There were, at least 3 major traumatic events during the tour. And things bothered me quite a bit for a long time, and I had to get it out of me. So the easiest way to get it out of me was to start writing, and that's what sort of spawned the book, if you will.
Okay. 717-4653.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Yeah,
I had
that was
an
my
echo
rifle
on mine.
number.
What's that? No, Joe,
That was
Jersey
my
Joe,
that
I'm
was my
sorry.
rifle number.
I didn't say 867-5309. Okay, that's a song. But I kind of apologize for this being a little scattershot in nature, but that was in reference also to your being an ammunition specialist. So,
No, yes.
and as an ammunition specialist, what was the nature of your job then?
The nature of my job, mostly day to day, was issuing out bombs and bullets for the operational units, so that they could, perform the jobs they needed to do. So we filled a lot of orders for mortars and Hellfire missiles, things of that nature, and a lot of 5.56 and 2.23.
Okay. Like I say, it's going to be a little scattershot, but folks, if you roll with me and if you roll with Joe and with Jersey Joe tonight, it's a journey, and we're going to take this journey. And I'm not going to try to emphasize quite so much the actual combat or the combat conditions or the situation in which you found yourself. We're going to make it kind of a personal expedition from the very physical and begin that way. And then we're going to move on a little bit towards the metaphysical. We will get there. So in order to understand what I believe you want the readers to understand, Joe, we have to start with you. Growing up, your family, in particular, your father. Why was your father important in your life? And what was he about?
My dad is a Vietnam veteran. He took care of my mother through 20 years of severe illness and taught me how to be a man. And he and I don't always see eye to eye, but he's a good man. So.
Okay, and your father is still living today then?
Yes, yes, he is.
Is he in the state of Washington near you?
He is not. He is in upstate New York.
Okay, and that's where you grew up, though, right? Initially, upstate New
Yes.
York. Okay. Joe Sowell, by the way, folks, who is the author of this book, written in 2023, The Broken Mirror of Memory, Iraq and Other Tales. As you were growing up, what were your aspirations? In other words, had 9/11 not occurred, and we'll get to that, of course, what were your goals? What were you thinking of? Your interests? What did you think before 9/11 that perhaps your interests lay?
You know, I really wanted to join the military for at least 4 years. But I wasn't sure what branch, and it was sort of willy-nilly. I really was my big thing.
Okay. And let me guess, that was because of the influence of your father.
Things change.
So you were living in upstate New York at the time that 9/11 occurred in 2001 then, correct?
Yes, I was. I was living in upstate New York then. Yes.
Okay. And I'm guessing because of the proximity where you were in upstate New York to New York City, 9/11, 2001 had a very personal impact with you. So what happened on that day that you can recall?
What I can recall is we were in a freshman history class, and the TVs were out on campus. There had been some sort of fire on campus a few days before school started. And so we heard about it on the radio. Our teacher got called in the hallway. She came back in, and then she turned on the radio. She was very upset, and that's how we heard about it. It was very, Pearl Harbor-esque. You hear about it on the radio. It was very strange.
And by that time, had you had the obviously the first plane had impacted, but by the time you guys heard about that, had the second plane impacted, and were people talking, oh, this is clearly an act of terrorism?
Yes, very much so.
And is that what basically all the people in, God, this is going to date me so badly. November 22nd, 1963, I was in junior high school. And when Kennedy was assassinated, we were rounded all up and shipped back home on buses. So it was that kind of a day where the nation basically stood still. And I would suggest that the nation stood even more still on 9/11. So because of your father, you were interested in going into the military. Did you kind of sense at the outset of your entry into the U.S. Army that there was going to be any kind of a moral conflict that you might experience?
Oh, I didn't expect a moral conflict whatsoever. That sort of stuff came later. But even for the first few years in the Army, I didn't really consider the moral conflict at all.
Okay. All righty. My dad was in the Air Force. He flew in World War II. And I'm curious, since we're both talking about fathers right now, My dad would not talk about World War II. I had to press him, and even under duress, he really didn't want to talk about it very much. Was your father fairly open about Vietnam and or what it is that he did in Vietnam?
Not so much. It was a lot of probing, a lot of pulling teeth, and even then, I really only got the full story a few years ago. Something that I promised him I would not share, but I really only got the full story a few years ago. It's
Okay.
taken him a long time to open up.
All righty. This is not in any of the questions, but just occurs to me. When my dad passed away in 2009, he was 88 years old. And don't let what happened to me happen to you, in terms of there's so much that I never discovered about my dad. And he passed away way before I ever had the chance to really sit down with him and in any kind of depth or detail, try to figure out his career and what his thoughts were. So my best advice to you is, and anybody that's listening, find out about your parents. Talk to them while they are still alive. Enjoy them while they are still present. If you have a good relationship with your mother and father, find out about their background, because
Once they're gone,
once they are gone, then they are never coming back. And there are many regrets that I have about not being able to speak to my father about many of the things that were huge contradictions with him. I circumvented a lot of really important information from him, and that was purposeful on my part. I had my own life, and quite frankly, that was very selfish of me. So, Joe, if you have the opportunity to speak to your father about any number of things, I would highly suggest it, and to anybody else. Anyway, having said that, did you ask yourself, Joe Sowell, later perhaps, why didn't I see this big tsunami coming after I entered the Army? And you said it took you a while before you began to question any kind of morality, plus or minus either column. And were these things apparently not insufficiently in your moral compass yet? I think we've got a bad interconnect.
I think they were in the moral compass, but I think it was just, frankly, it was brainwashing. And, frankly, it was brainwashing. It took a little time to sort of let the humanness of the experience overcome the institutional brainwashing that, frankly.
Uh-oh.
yeah.
Now, are you taking?
I don't know.
There he is. Okay, there we go. So, at what point, Joe Sowell, did you become eminently aware that this time in the U.S. Army, I think it was about 2 years, you said, was not comporting with what you expected? So it wasn't immediate. It kind of built up a little bit.
Yeah, it built up, and it really started during the tour when I really started, interacting with the Iraqi people. That's, on a daily basis, doing worker escort missions, really getting to know them, realizing that I didn't really have a quarrel with them, as human beings. I really didn't. And that really started me on a different path that I didn't expect.
So that was, I don't know, before you went to Iraq in 2008, served from 08 to 09. When did you first go into the Army?
2006.
Okay. And so for the intervening 2 years, where were you stationed?
I was in the reserves, so I went to basic training at Fort Knox, went to AIT at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, and then shipped home to go to my reserve unit. And then volunteered for a deployment with a buddy of mine from the 237th. And, off we went.
Okay. It was only after you got to Iraq in '08 that you began to question your motivations for entry, and you had some moral grounds that were creating questions for you. Tell us, if you will, your thoughts about your. Now, you said you went with a buddy, went in and inducted with a buddy. Tell us what your thoughts are with your fellow soldiers as you moved through your Army experiences, because you go into a fair amount of detail about the individuals that you served with. And you also indicated that you have, in general, fairly decent thoughts about them. So, I guess what I'm asking is, did you feel that they were in a similar situation to you, and a lot of people may have been gobsmacked by what it was that they saw and experienced?
I think a lot of people were surprised, especially if it was their first tour. And there's I say in the book something to the effect of, a war can be unjust, but a warrior's never unjust if they're willing to lay down their life for their friends. And I found that was the case for the people in my unit. It was the case for me, and that camaraderie means something to me, whether or not I believe the cause was just, or the invasion was justified or not. It doesn't change the respect and what I have for my comrades, and it won't.
So when you went into initial training, was there anything in your training that made you made the little radar stand up at the top of your head and say, I wonder if I've done the right thing initially, just from the very get-go?
Not initially. It was really looking back in reflection. When, the military has to break you down and make you able to kill other people. That's, when push comes to shove, you have to be able to pull that trigger before the other guy pulls the trigger. You have to be able to do that to protect your team. And that requires a lot of dehumanization. It requires you to view the enemy as not human. And that's done through a lot of conditioning. So looking back on that conditioning, I go, oh boy, that was really something, but at the time, no, it didn't bother me. In fact, it was invigorating.
So as far as you were concerned, this is something that you apparently had mentally anticipated under that kind of training then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I have the page right here. In your book, you write that you return home and you pretty much immediately fell into the addiction of drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about that from 2008 to 2009, and then you returned back when, Joe Sowell?
I returned in January 2009.
Okay.
It would have been right before the presidential inauguration, because I remember seeing that on TV at home.
Okay.
But I fell into a deep chasm of darkness, trying to drink the dead back to life, basically. And
Okay.
it turns out that doesn't work. But
all right, tell me about that. Bringing the dead back to life. How could you possibly have done that?
well, I sure tried. I sure tried to drink them back to life. That's
Okay. All right. Okay, I understand. Was there any point in your assignment where, I don't know, one day, 1 week, 1 hour, you finally said to yourself, this is absolutely nothing like I thought it was going to be, and I am no longer interested in being here?
Yeah, I definitely had those thoughts, but not wanting to abandon the unit, I continued. But it would have been right after the May 17th attack, where I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." I, I don't think I want to be here, but you continue, you continue the mission.
Now, there was a missile attack. Now, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Initially? Okay. And then there was a helo crash, though, wasn't there also?
Yeah, the helo crash was probably you know, probably one of the most moving things you'll ever do is attend a ramp ceremony for, soldiers going home who have been killed. And it was incredibly moving, and it really changes your life forever. It really makes you realize what a heavy price people are willing to pay for the safety of their fellow citizens, for the safety of their fellow soldiers, the freedoms we all enjoy, because that's what people sign up for. Whether or not our wars are fought for those particular reasons, that's a question for debate. But when you see what those people are willing to put on the line, and they pay the full ultimate, you know, their last full measure of devotion, when they give it all up, it really.
He's going to be back in right now.
Okay.
Yep, it really does give you pause.
Okay. What was your interaction with that crash? Did you have to police the area, or did you know anyone that happened to be on board?
My first sergeant policed the area. He was part of a, part of a part team, part of a recovery team. Our involvement was simply to be a presence at their, transfer ceremony after the bodies have been identified. Some of them couldn't be identified; they couldn't be, separated. They had to be buried together, but they did have, they were able to identify enough of the individual soldiers, 7 caskets, and our job was simply to be there to honor them, to make sure that they won with honor.
Okay. And there was a third event that was striking for you?
I'm sorry?
Was there a third event that was striking for you there that occurred?
I'm sorry about this, guys. I hope that's not me.
These softwares that we use, sometimes when they do updates, they really fudge it up. So it could very well
sorry
be.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, the third event was the first week we were in country. 3 soldiers were killed from the 7th Sustainment Brigade, the brigade we were attached to. And one soldier was so severely wounded, he was the second most severely wounded soldier from the Iraq War. He lost both his legs, he lost his right hand, and was blinded and has a traumatic brain injury. So I just recently connected with him on Facebook, doing pretty well, all things considered. But that was our
Well, folks, it's estimated that about 22 veterans commit suicide per day. And that's a terrible number. I have my own personal thoughts about the VA. We'll go into the VA in just a moment. With that in consideration, you became depressed when you got home. You exhibited, I'm guessing, PTSD. Whether or not you were diagnosed, I don't know. You can tell me. You went to the VA for help. Now, I have another friend, Michael Jones, who has any number of experiences with the VA. Unfortunately, most of his are not very good. And then he passed away probably a year ago. You got depressed. You went to the VA. You had PTSD. You went there for help. They mostly, if I'm reading this correctly, they mostly dispensed pills. What have your encounters in general been with the VA? And, well, quite frankly, were they equipped to deal with the vast volume of people that were coming back from Iraq and from the Middle East?
They were not equipped during the war, I'll tell you that much. They're getting much better now. They're doing a much better job. I can't say enough good things about the VA therapist I have. My entire care team. I mean, they have me set up to the nines now. Back then in 2008, 2009, they really were not prepared. It was like there was no planning whatsoever for a bunch of traumatized troops coming back. And they were not prepared at all at the time. But like I said, they're much better now.
Okay. I'm going to quote from the book. You wrote that you also became addicted to cigarettes. So I'm guessing you were not a smoker. And then when you went across the pond, then you picked up cigarettes.
Yes. Smoking was very popular, and I got one during the first rocket attack, and yeah. Oh, I love my cigarettes.
Okay. This is a quote from your book. You wrote, "Getting sober will be a challenge for me. Even now, so far removed from the desert, God forgive me, but self-loathing plays a part. Hatred of the self can be the most destructive force in our lives, and I serve as proof of that. I turned to poetry to get the pain out of me. It might work better than booze and nicotine." And I would also submit, writing this book, was it not? Putting pen to paper, attempting to be cathartic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The writing process was definitely cathartic. And I think it does work better than booze and cigarettes myself.
So you found it therapeutic, cleansing.
Yes, very much.
On
I
a
hate to jump in
scale,
here.
I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Let me jump in here real quick. We're going to go to break real quick, and we'll continue this conversation when we get back. Hang on.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Attention, all patriotic women of faith. Yep, I'm talking to you, sis. Are you looking for high-quality, super soft apparel that reflects your love for country and your devotion to God? Look no further than Carry Girl Gear. Picture this. You rocking a tee so soft it's like being hugged by a cloud, all while showing off your love for God and country. Sounds dreamy, right? Well, welcome to reality, babes, because that's what we're all about here at Carry Girl Gear. We specialize in super soft tees, tanks, and more, designed specifically for the strong, patriotic woman who proudly wants to carry their message of faith and freedom. When you shop with us, you're not just getting a t-shirt. You're joining a community of like-minded women who are proud to wear their beliefs straight on their tees. So whether you're sipping sweet tea on the porch or leading the charge for faith and freedom, do it in a Carry Girl tee. Because life's too short for stiff, boring tees. CarryGirl.com, where faith and freedom meets fashion.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
What is the Edge of Liberty? News, politics, commentary, sarcasm, alcohol, and high blood pressure. It's as American as a good revolution. So tune in every Monday and Friday at 12 Pacific, 3 p.m. on the East Coast on the SHR Media Network and KLRN Radio. For details, visit www.shrmedia.com.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, and I'm here to make sense out of the senseless right here on shrmedia.com. Conservative media done right. I want to make sure everything's good with you, Joe. Questions aren't.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure that you're nice and comfortable and everything. And this is why I brought BZ on. And it's a good thing because it's like wind the man up and let him go.
Shit.
Let him cook.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Hey, folks, we're talking to the author of this book, Joseph Sowell.
Here, let's
And
bring
he
something up.
wrote,
Let's
I'm
do
sorry,
this.
go ahead, Jersey Joe.
Here, I'm going to do this for you. Make it a little bit
Okay.
easier. Boom.
Okay.
Why didn't that come up? Oh,
I don't know. It's called The Broken Mirror of Memory, Iraq and Other Tales. There we go. Thank you. Written in 2023. And we have the pleasure and the honor of speaking to its author, Joseph Sowell, tonight. And putting pen to paper.
I'm sorry to interrupt, PZ. You also had a message because I know you can't see the chat that well.
No.
Jeremy Hansen has said hello, BZ.
Oh, okay, great. Outstanding. Good to see you, Jeremy. So, as I said, putting pen to paper, Joe, had to be cathartic and cleansing and therapeutic. And here's your book. You've issued it. It has been published. Your name is on it. What do you want people to know about your Iraqi experiences, sir?
Well, that, it's not a story of extreme, of valor. It's not a story of, there's not a lot of heroics in it. Really, what I want people to take away is that war is complicated, and war is a really, really bad thing that I think we should avoid at all costs. That's what I really want people to take away, is that you put people into bad situations when you send them to war, so you damn well better be sure that it's the right reasons.
So, Joe Sowell, you called yourself, and I found this very interesting because I was a devotee of this author a long time ago. You called yourself the Billy Pilgrim from Kurt Vonnegut's Schlachterhaus 5 or Schlachthaus 5. Why did you, how and or why did you liken yourself to Billy Pilgrim out of the Kurt Vonnegut novel?
Well, because things were often silly, things were often absurd, and like Billy Pilgrim, I'm often unstuck in time. And I will go back to Iraq in an instant, and then I'm back here. And I think what Vonnegut was really trying to express was the time travel involved with PTSD. And I found that to be a very apt reflection of my experience. I think what I said was I'm more Billy Pilgrim than Achilles.
Yes, you
To
did.
be sure, yeah. And because there's so much chest beating, especially in the veteran memoir community. That's not what I'm here to do. And I had my time in the shit, shall we say. And I just did what I had to do, and I think anyone else would have done the same. And it's not something to brag about or go rah rah this and that. But I found the entire experience completely absurd. I find a lot of things absurd, but that might just be me. But I found that I really related with Billy Pilgrim quite a bit.
Okay, so apparently you've done some reading. My guess would be if you like Vonnegut, and since you've been placed in that kind of a situation, my guess would be that you've probably read. And folks, sorry, and this is the direction that I'm going. I'm not going to go back necessarily so much into Iraq anymore, because out of this book, there's the cover. This is what you need to buy. You'll go through this overnight, and then 184 pages later, you'll start to ask yourself some questions. And I think that's the point of the book. My guess would be, since you appear to be rather well read, is that you've read Dr. Viktor Frankl's 1946 book, Man's Search for Meaning. That was all about for folks that are not familiar with Viktor Frankl. His book encompassed Frankl's ordeals as a Jew in a Nazi concentration camp in World War II. He tried to find and determine meaning for what it was that he saw and experienced. He later identified 3 purposes to live one's life by: the completion of tasks, caring for another person, and finding meaning by facing suffering with dignity. Did those things, Joe Sowell, resonate with you?
Certainly caring for, your fellow human being really resonated with me. It's why I'm seeking ordination. It's why I devote my life to only do work that will help a fellow human being. I no longer will do work that harms another human being. That includes working in the defense industry, working in any field that might create harm. I will only work in fields that create good, unless desperation drives me to do otherwise. Thankfully, that hasn't come up since the Army. I've done a lot of jobs I didn't like, but nothing that caused harm. So that was good. And that particular point really resonates with me. The caring for your fellow human beings. That really is the purpose of life. To me, that's all we got, riding this strange rock together, is to care for our fellow human beings and to do kindness to them. That really resonates with me. The completing of tasks, I was obsessed with completing tasks for a long time and sort of still am. Propelling the book to a bestseller, finishing a master's degree, things of that nature. Just go, go, go. I found it, shall we say, unsatisfying, the completion of tasks. But what I found really satisfying was the caring for, a fellow human being, no matter where that might be.
I have to ask you this. Did you read Viktor Frankl before you wrote your book or after?
I read it before, but I can't say that I was consciously thinking of it.
Okay. Because I was curious, because to glean whatever information is valuable for each individual, because it resonates with each individual on a very different level. I was curious whether you'd read that before, and or did that have any influence on how it is that you thought, okay, I'm going to lay my thoughts down. How am I going to craft this book?
I didn't really have a set process. It was mostly getting really drunk and writing down what I thought, then going through and editing it to take care of any typos, then getting really drunk and writing again. And that was my process. I wouldn't recommend it, but that was my process.
A little hard on the body, one might say.
PZ, Jeremy, I think, has a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I popped it up on the screen if you want to.
Oh, okay. All right. A buddy of mine, Jeremy Hansen, says, is it more empathy driven or common sense driven to design things to help people? So, Joe, what do you think?
For me, for myself, it's much more empathy driven.
Okay.
I could see where it might be an act of common sense. You would hope it would become an act of common sense. I only wish our society was, sort of wired that way. I don't think it is. I'm not sure it's so common, but I think for me that it's very empathy driven. And that's just for me. It may be different for Jeremy, and I honor that. But for me, it's strictly empathy driven.
I'm going to mention a guy right here. I don't know if you know this particular soldier, whether his name, but you'll know his situation would be my guess. At any point before or after going into the Army, particularly afterwards, and perhaps in terms of writing the book, did you ever think of this guy named Desmond Doss? Desmond Doss was a medic in World War II, and he was a corporal. He served as a combat medic. They made a movie out of him. I cannot think of the name of the movie at this point. Due to his religious beliefs, though, he refused to carry a weapon, but they kept him. And as he saved, he died when he was 87. That much I do remember. He was given the Bronze Star for actions on Guam and I think the Philippines, and he saved a ton of guys.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Thank you. So I'm curious whether he had influence before or after, and if so, was he somebody that you may have been thinking about as you were writing your book?
Yes, he had influence after. It's funny, I didn't know about him at the time. I was going through all this interesting stuff, but Desmond Doss served with the 77th Infantry Division in World War II, was the only conscientious objector to win the Medal of Honor. And as luck would have it, I served with the 77th in Iraq. So
Very interesting.
we actually served with the same unit.
And I said I was going to go someplace that I thought you weren't
So
going to.
he is my personal hero.
Perfect. Excellent. Now's the time for me to bring this up. You became a Buddhist.
Yes.
Are you still an active participant in Buddhism? And again, I'm going somewhere with this.
Yes, I still meditate on a regular basis. I'll still go to the Zen Center. I have become heavily involved in the Episcopal Church of recent years. I'm sort of a very ecumenical person. But yes, I'm still deeply involved in Buddhism.
Okay. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't know if you're aware of it. I'll get to it in a moment. Don't some of the tenets of Buddhism through, I'm going to try to see if I pronounce the name properly, Siddhartha Gautama, basically Buddha. Don't the tenets of Buddhism involve primarily suffering and how the individual deals with that?
Yes, they do.
And so Buddha said, and again, if you grant me a little leeway, I am going somewhere with this. So Buddha said, there is truth in suffering. There's truth of the cause of suffering. There's truth of the end of suffering. And there's truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. So what I picked up out of this is the relationship that you had with suffering, your life experience. That is, I'm asking if did that have something to do with the broach of allowing Buddhism to resonate with you? Because as I went through your prior interviews, because I do show prep, you mentioned suffering, intentionally or not. And that to me related to your interest in Buddhism.
Oh
Yep.
yes, I would say that although I can't say my suffering has been greater than any other man, to me my suffering has been great. And I watched a documentary where a poet once said, the point of Buddha is really to say we're all going to suffer, we're all going to go through a lot of bad stuff, and then we're all going to get sick and we're all going to die, and we need to find a way to make that all okay. And that's really what I've been trying to do, studying various religions, including Buddhism, is just try to make it all okay. And I don't know that I've come to the answer yet, but yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Somebody was asking if my dog, one of the 5 that I have over here, was he under your desk? And the answer is no. So sorry about that. One point, I don't know if you picked this up in your book, and I'm very curious with this answer. I noted at one point in your book, you kind of mentioned, and I think in passing, an individual sitting under a tree. And as soon as I looked into Buddhism, I went, oh, Buddha meditated under a tree. And that's where he recognized that he could be free from suffering. Did you insert that with purpose?
Not entirely. I know the portion you're talking about, really. I just wanted whoever found it to go out, sit under a tree and enjoy the nice day. My one hope is that someone finds it in 100 years. That's really my hope. And of course, by that time, I'll be dead. That was not intentional. But it's interesting how everyone takes the book and really makes it their own. And I love that about.
Well, you mentioned about your book and people taking books because people have all sorts of different interpretations for books. The Viktor Frankl book really, really resonated with me. So my observation is, you correct me and then elaborate if you wish. Your book was therapy. You write poetry. Your poetry was therapy. And Buddhism also is your therapy?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah. The meditation really helps. Really helps ground you, really helps refocus you. and give you, it gives you some peace, which is so hard to come by in this plane, isn't it?
I found it to be very true. Do you believe in fate?
I don't know. I
In other
truly
words,
don't.
in other words, was this your fate?
I never considered it my fate, but perhaps it was. If if it is my fate, it certainly is interesting because it's not selling very well.
Well, see, again, this is another reason I enjoy interviewing people. I do this now because it keeps me off heroin and keeps me off the street. I'm just kidding. I was never on heroin. Thalidomide maybe, but not heroin.
When he's talking on the street, he's prostituting himself.
That's right. And I do this not because I'm making any money at it, because I'm not making any money at it, but I'm doing this because I love the hell out of it. And I'm guessing that you did this because it was necessary in your travels through life. And perhaps that was your fate. Now I'm going to get strange.
Yeah, like BZ was saying, and it's not only that we don't make money doing this, we actually lose money.
Well, yeah.
There's software, there's all the stuff that we pay for. And
you're not
BZ, myself, and Sean, we do this out of our own pocket. We have no sponsors, none of that. And it's just our love of it. And sometimes, just as my career, I chose as EMS. I didn't choose it because of money. I chose it because it was something that I was passionate. I love to do. Sometimes it's great just to sit back and do things not for money.
Just for the love of it. And there certainly was a lot of it in writing the book. It's so hard to become a best-selling author in the first place that if you're going to write a book and actually complete it, you're doing it because you love it, because the chances are slim to nil.
You've done something that a lot of people probably will never do, just writing a book right there. That's an accomplishment right there.
It took quite a while.
Well, yeah, to see your name on a book that you published. There we go. I knew if I put it in there, I'd finally get it.
It's really something.
It must have been a rather market accomplishment when you got your first copies of that. So you were a very interesting cat. Folks, talking to Joseph Soul, the Broken Mirror of Memory. And you can go to other podcasts and listen to Joe talk about the physicalities that occurred during his time in Iraq. And I said I wanted to make this a little bit different because, and I would highly recommend the book and listen to the other podcasts and read the book itself. Joe Soul, do you sometimes think of yourself as a contrarian? That you are a walking contradiction, as in, how did I ever get here? I believe this over here at the time I was believing this over here when I enlisted. Does that cause conflict? And have you resolved it in any fashion?
It certainly is contrary, isn't it? And I feel that it's come to a place of resolution mostly because of what's at the end of the book, the thing I added on later. But, for me, Iraq has come to a place of resolution. And really, I'm now on a new track. And that track is completely different than the track I was on when I was 18 years old. Thank God. I don't think we're living if we're not changing, really. And, but yes, there certainly was quite a bit of contradiction in my life. And I think that's been part of the growth, part of the struggle, and part of the learning experience, really.
Let me ask you another question. Just because of the nature of what it is that I did for a long time until I retired in 2016, I've spoken to a lot of people who have had PTSD and or people that have thought about committing suicide, both in the military and in law enforcement service of that nature. And besides any number of other threads that go through these people, Some a fair portion of them have said to me something that I found rather shocking. So I can't not ask this of you. They said, there are days when I don't feel like I'm a human being. There are days when I feel that I'm a simulation. There are days that I think I'm pretending to be human because I'm not really that. And I found that a really insightful, and to have these people tell me this, I found extremely enlightening, but I wouldn't have assumed it. And they only revealed that after I got to know them for a while. And I found that a very interesting observation. So I'm curious with you, have you ever gone down that particular alleyway?
Well, I think it's possible we are living in a simulation. That's, clearly beside the point of your question. But yes, I might be a simulation. But I've definitely felt like, especially when I first got back, I remember I went to a therapist. It was someone I just walked in off the street, to see, and just begged him to see me. And I'm like, I don't know how to be a person. I don't know how to get back into living in this society, in this place. I don't belong here. And there's obviously been some mistake, and I need to go back
And
because
yes, I would
I
echo
don't
that too. Many of the people said
I
that
don't
as well.
fit. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I felt like I no longer fit, and it took a long time to fit enough to where you can go unnoticed.
So, Joe Soul, how do you reconcile what you did and saw and how you are now? Do you still feel like after 2008 to 2024, do you still feel as though in some fashion I got to atone?
I will always be atoning, and I'll tell you why. And it's something that's not in the book, but it's something that was recently brought back to my attention. Um, During our tour in Iraq, we had a hot mission, and we had to take out a mortar team that was firing on our base. So we brought Hellfires over to the drones. Drones took off. They took out the mortar team, and they also took out 6 kids. And they showed us the video. And that's something that I will I will be a servant washing feet the rest of my life because I have been involved in things that I don't believe should have happened. I don't believe they were preventable, but it still doesn't make it right. So, do I feel still I have to atone? Yes. I think I will be atoning the rest of my life. In Buddhism, it's known as accumulating merit, but I don't view it that way. Really, it's a visceral experience. It's not something that is a means to an end. It's something that must be done for the sake of all sentient beings.
So, Joe Soul, who needs to forgive you, if anybody, besides you?
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of self-forgiveness that has to happen. Um, but I tend to view it this way. If I wore my hat, or rather the hat with Multinational Corps Iraq on it, and I walked down the street in beautiful downtown Nasiriyah today, how many steps do you think I would get? They all know what that symbol is.
Yep.
You know, you know, you just got to wonder how many steps I would get. And maybe I would. I don't know. But if I openly identified myself as one of the former occupiers, and with my tattoos, that's pretty much a dead giveaway. I have Multinational Corps Iraq right here. I can never do this right for the camera. There it is. So there's self-forgiveness that has to happen. and it's a process. It's not something that's all at once, and it's been a 16-year process for me, and it's gonna take a little longer, not because of a conscious choice, but because there's a lot of interwoven pain with that, a lot of interwoven guilt, a lot of survivor's guilt, a lot of moral injury, a lot of PTSD, and that's going to take some time. But I talk about it, and I come on shows to talk about it to let other veterans know they're not alone. If they're thinking these things in the back of their head, I'm willing to say it out loud, just to say, hey guys, what you're going through is real. It's not bullshit. It's really there.
Jersey Joe and Joe, do you guys have another, say, 5 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got all night, BZ.
Okay, folks. I want to reemphasize. Okay, I want to reemphasize again that I'm talking to Joe Sowell. I recommend his book.
For you, BZ. Me cheat.
Pardon?
I'm going to cheat for you.
Thank you. The Broken Mirror of Memory. Iraq and Other Tales. And I think we've established that essentially your book, amongst other things, was like a form of therapy. And I've read any number of books. I recommend these. My guess is that Joe has probably read quite a number of these. But besides reading his book, if you want to begin to understand the mind and what occurs in combat, there are some that I would recommend. And let me know, if you would, Joe, if you've read these. On Combat by Dave Grossman. There's another one. That really, really grabbed me. It's Chicken Hawk by Robert Mason, with his time in Vietnam flying a Huey. And his PTSD essentially ended up with him flying drugs for cartels and ending up doing a stint in prison. Lieutenant General Harold Moore. We were soldiers once and young. And folks, if you've ever watched the series The Pacific, I think it was HBO, there are two incredible books that came out of World War II that truly expressed, like Joe's, the mindset and, if for lack of no other words, the mindfuck, the phrase that occurs when you experience war. One is Helmet for My Pillow by Robert Leckie, and the other one is With the Old Breed, and that's by a guy named E.B. Sledge. But I have to ask you, Joe, a couple more questions, if you will. The title,
Please.
The Mirror of Memory Broken. Why that title? What does that mean to you?
Because, well, the book was originally called something else. It had a whole other title. And as I was getting ready to publish it, was about the time that I started getting letters from, calls and letters from my former commander who had read my first, the first iteration. And they said, hey, you left out this. Hey, you left out that. Hey, did you remember doing this? And one of those things was my actions during the attack on May 17th. And I said, no, I don't remember that. I thought that was a nightmare that my mind was making up, because I would have it as a nightmare. I would have, buildings burning and people screaming and things of that nature. And I had nothing to connect it to. It was just a disjointed thing floating in my memory. I would wake up screaming and, such and such. I'd run down the hallway, sleep screaming. And I had no point of reference to what it was. And when I found out the full picture of what had happened from the other guys that were there, I decided, bang, well, the title of the book is The Broken Mirror of Memory, because you're finally putting all the pieces together. And that's kind of where I came up with the title.
I think that's wonderful. I'm just curious, though, since you opened that door, I'm going to walk through. What was the original title that you were thinking about? Because this one is about 10 times better than whatever it was that you were thinking.
The original title was Conversations with Ali, because
okay.
Ali, my translator,
right.
Was a really, really great example of just wonderful humanity to me. And he was one of the defining people of my tour. And, like I said, I had blocked out so much that, to me, he was one of the biggest things of the tour. later on I would find out, hey, by the way, you did some crazy. Right. I keep forgetting I can swear on here.
You
Hey,
can.
by the way, you did some crazy fucking bullshit. And here's a couple letters for the VA. And I read them and I'm like, holy shit, I actually did do that. But then I called I would call my first sergeant and say, I didn't do that. I don't remember doing that. I no. He's like, yeah, you did. It's in the letter. Submit the damn thing. And I was glad I did because it's
Well, see,
sort of
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
well, it sort of validated my time. It changed my perspective on the tour. And while I would say I stand by everything in this book because it's true, um, I'm no longer the person that wrote this book because guys in my unit came and picked me up and carried me with them. I'm no longer the person that wrote this. I'm a different person now. And this is just a history of the reintegration, the coming home, the readjustment process. All this is a history of my experience up to this point. But I can now say for the first time in 16 years that what happened, what I describe in this book, doesn't define me anymore. So.
You beat me to one of the questions, so that's excellent. The book CV, by the way, I'm looking at the back, and in the back here, the book CV says that you are a decorated combat veteran. And I also, while doing show prep for this, saw that you were awarded the Combat Action Badge by a congresswoman in Washington named Marilyn Strickland in March of this year while you were serving with the 962nd Ordnance Company in 2008.
That's correct.
So you mention it here, and I've listened to you for the past hour.
Mhm.
Do those things, awards and such, do they have any meaning to you?
They didn't used to. And I guess what really has meaning is the story behind that. The story behind that badge has more meaning to me than the badge itself. I could go on the rest of my life without a badge and be just fine. But for me, it's the story behind it. It's really the fact that three fellow soldiers of mine, my first sergeant, my former commander, who's now a colonel, who works for Eurocom, and my former squad leader, who is pretty high up in the online college, circuit, has his master's and stuff like that, took the time to write 3 letters for me, to give to that congresswoman's office. And they took the time to tell me what I did. And it's kind of hard to explain, I guess. Yes, it means something, but it's more the story behind it that changed my life.
Okay.
From that moment on, I knew that I had at least done my duty. And if I had done my duty, because I was able to do my duty under fire and not duty myself, I actually was able to, do what I needed to do. I felt a sense of validation and a sense of closure on the tour that I hadn't had before. It completely reframed it for me in a way that took it from a negative to a positive. And that's why I end the book with it.
Okay.
Because it completely reframed the story.
Joe Sowell, I see that you're a banjo player. You're a YouTuber. You call yourself War Dove for Peace. You're a substitute teacher. You're a member of the American Legion. You're a minister. So, in general, what do your future plans look like at this point?
Well, I'm going to be master of my local Masonic Lodge here coming up. The installation is in a couple weeks, and that's very exciting. Exciting to step into that role and see what we can accomplish over the year as a lodge. I plan on getting a Master's of Divinity after that. I'm looking into programs right now, and I'm working on a second book that sort of follows the frame, if you will, of Dostoevsky's Underground Man. Sort of, The Ramblings and Confessions of a Madman, shall we say. And that is going to come out pretty soon here if I can get my editor online and continue to wrangle with the publisher. But, you know, I co-own the publishing company, so I don't think we'll have too many problems with the publishing company. But,
Perfect.
It's really more getting it to an editor that can handle the substance.
So when you're talking about Dostoevsky, are you talking about the dream of a ridiculous man? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
Hell, I might have it in front of me here.
Damn, my
You're
long-term
sitting on my
memory.
bookshelf, so.
My long-term memory actually succeeded, which is completely shocking. Jersey Joe and Joe. I think I've come to my end at this point, and I know we have to wrap things up. Jersey Joe, is there anything that you would care to add at this point?
No, it's like I said, just I knew you'd do the good job that I expected out of you, and you did it way beyond what I would have done. And I just wanted to give Joe the best interview for his book that we can give him on SHR Media. So,
and Joe, do you have anything that you think you may have left out, or anything that you want to emphasize? Oh, and I have another question after that too. God, BZ, when you say you're done,
Sure.
you're never done.
What would I emphasize? Guys, if anybody out there gets the book, please leave a review. They mean the world. It really is nice to get feedback, even if it's bad. Just please, for the love of God, leave a review.
Okay, and again, I emphasize, this is the book. Joseph Soul, this is the author. We've spoken to him tonight. The Broken Mirror of Memory, Iraq and Other Tales. And so, Joe, are there any other locations you'd like to let people know about? Any websites or social media that you'd care to reference?
Yeah, you can follow me on X at JoeSoul2. And you can find the book on Amazon. And there's a link at the top of my X profile right there. Feel free to give me a follow, and we can have a conversation.
Excellent.
And I guess while I have you, check out Word Up for Peace on YouTube.
Okay. There you go. Your own channel. Excellent. Jersey Joe, sir, it's over to you.
I guess this is where we're going to wrap it up. I really want to appreciate, and BZ's covered everything, top to bottom, inside and out. So I just sat here like a pretty face.
And you are.
And you look great doing it.
You're the cutest.
I want to thank you, Joe. Joe Scholl. I keep wanting to combine the two just for some reason, the way my mind works. But I want to thank you
That's
for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Joe, thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate it. And
BZ
and your sacrifice.
Yes, thank you for that. With that, we're going to head out of here. And I want everybody to have a great day. I'll see everybody Friday at 9 p.m. right here on SHR Media.